Okay, welcome to the Crow Discovery Project. Sorry for my absence. We've had a lot of bad weather, a lot of clouds, very little opportunity to shoot, and on the opportunities we've had to shoot, we haven't had any luck. So I'm going to make a clip here about the sun. I've been getting a lot of comments and messages from people asking about the sun and the zodiac in particular, and referencing one of the clips that I made a while ago where the sun is encoded in movies. So let's jump in and do that. Okay, so here is an image of the sun taken with a solar telescope through an H alpha filter. Shows you the prominences and stuff. And this is the all-important sun and what is being encoded all over our planet and tracked by the people who rule this place. So let's quickly take a minute so you understand why the zodiac is important. If you look at this image, there's a band around the planet which represents the zodiacal stars. It's just simply a band of constellations that happens to be in place to be behind the sun when we look at the sun from our perspective. If you imagine yourself sitting on the planet down there and the sun is in between you and, say, that crab right there, Cancer, and you see that it is covering Cancer, then the sun is currently in Cancer. That's what it's about. It's not about Cancer having some influence or this constellation having some bearing on your life. It's not about any of that. It's simply a marker in the sky, like boundaries on a map. And as a matter of fact, if you took the Grand Canyon as an example and someone moved the name of the state or the boundaries of the state around the Grand Canyon, it would not affect the Grand Canyon one bit. Just the names around it would change. And that is akin to what the zodiac is doing. And as a matter of fact, the zodiac is not accurate right now because of the precession of the equinoxes. We are not currently in Aquarius. We're actually in Pisces, though we will continue to call it Aquarius. And I'll explain that to you. So let's move on. Okay, so here we are in Stellarium looking at the sun, and what I've done is I've rolled it up to near the spring equinox. The reason I've done this is because the age they talk about, the age of Aquarius and all these other things, it's determined by where the sun is in the sky at the spring equinox. Actually, March should be the first month of the year, but that's a whole other clip. So let me just quickly make it perfectly clear that what this is about is angles of sunlight hitting the earth. That's what this is about. That is what's being tracked. That is what is important here. And to put it in perspective in like some way that we can make sense of it, if you consider that in the springtime the sun comes over the equator of the earth, the effect of that is that all the plants begin to bloom and make fruit and things like that. And when it's gone all the way around to the other equinox in fall, all the fruit and the harvest is ready. So there is a direct reference you can make in your mind to understand that the sun does in fact have a big role, have a big effect on what happens to us on this planet. At any rate, let me turn on this is for March of 2015, and you can see there's Pisces. Well, we're supposed to be in the sign of Aquarius, and a lot of people don't agree where we are exactly, but I believe we've probably been in Aquarius since about 1900. Now, Aquarius is over here, and you can see that we're saying the sun is in Aquarius, but it's not. Now, you can go look up the precession of the equinoxes to understand why this is. Basically, we're told the world spins like a top, and that's why the zodiacal signs behind the sun change. But it doesn't matter whether we are in Aquarius or in Pisces. The reason that it doesn't matter is because we're simply talking about angles of sunlight. So we will continue to talk about the zodiac in a way that was accurate some 100 years ago or more, a few 100 years ago, and it will still work because every spring the sun is in the same place when it crosses the equator, and that's what it's about, is the angles of sunlight. Okay, to illustrate just how important this is, if you go back and look at almost any old map, you will see that the sun is encoded all over these maps, and this is just another example. I think this is from 1696, this map. But let's take a closer look. And first of all, notice the illumination around the map, because that is also common. This one happens to have the zodiac encoded across the top, and then there's these little illuminated panels, and we'll take a quick look at those. So right here in this corner over here is Aries, and you can see the little sign for Aries. This is when the sun passes over. See, even the language is encoded in our religion and stuff. Passes over the equator. And Easter, the sun is rising due east at these times. It's encoded everywhere. If we look up here, there's Aries, and these are the spring zodiacal signs. The illumination in the maps reflects it. Look, the flowers, the blooming things. Here's the angle of the sun. This arc is the angle of the sun through the summertime. The summer solstice is at the peak here. This is when the sun is in Cancer. And over here is fall, when we come to Libra, when the sun is going to dip below the equator. And down here you see the harvest in the illumination. And, the flame representing the sun. Now we come over here. Look, at this time of year, the grapes. Here's the blood of the grapes being poured into the chalice, because this is the time of year when grapes come ripe. And so on this side of the map, here is the arc of the sun through the winter months. The center of this would be the winter solstice, or Capricorn. And over here, look at the illumination. She's holding a branch with no leaves on it. It's cold. The fire is dim down here. It's encoded everywhere. And here's the zodiacal signs up top here for winter on the right-hand side. So this is not just encoded in maps. Every movie I have watched in the last couple of years since I've been paying attention to this has had the sun encoded, and I'll address that a little bit. Okay, so let's just take a quick look at the Zodiac, and right there is the title and the upload date of a movie that I made that actually goes through the movie and demonstrates the path of the sun being encoded into the movie. But let's reorient the Zodiac here so that you can picture it in your mind in the way that you can think about it when you're watching movies to discover that this is in fact being encoded in nearly all movies. At the top you'll see the winter or the summer solstice, which is the sign of Cancer. And this cross you may recognize from Catholic churches. It's exactly what it's encoding. It's encoding equinoxes and solstices, and I have done clips on the Vatican showing their obelisks from cities of the sun in Egypt and their tracking of the sun in St. Peter's Square. But anyhow, if you look at the Zodiac in this way, generally the movies move clockwise, and occasionally they will imply certain signs. Sometimes they will demonstrate every sign, and at times they will skip a few and maybe show a symbol for Cancer, then skip Leo and Virgo and show something like a scale to demonstrate that you're currently in Libra. At any rate, when you think of the Zodiac in your head, you should think about it in this orientation and moving clockwise around the dial there, much like a clock, which, and actually I'll take a minute to talk about the clock. Okay, so in movies you will see that the clock, quite a few times when you're watching a movie, there will be a cutaway to a clock, which is really not pertinent to the storyline, but nonetheless, it's put right in your face, and most of the time it's quick flashes of a clock, or sometimes there'll be a clock in the background. But since there are 12 zodiac signs and 12 numbers on a clock, it works in much the same way. They can encode a lot of things, but I figured I would take a minute to mention, you will notice that they encode 9/11 a lot on clocks. Now this could be simply done by putting one hand on 11 and one hand on 9, but what you will see in Simpsons, in Back to the Future, just a lot of movies, they will put one hand so that it is one tick past 10, which is 11, and that is 9 minutes to the top of the hour. And then the other hand will be encoding something else. One movie that we saw recently, the other hand was on 3, and the movie was released 3 years before 9/11 in 2001. So the other hand was encoding the year. But there's a lot of ways that you can encode, and so many movies we see 9/11 encoded. But in Indiana Jones, as an example, we saw both hands pointing down when the encoded storyline was in Sagittarius and Capricorn, which would be down here around the 6. So let's keep moving. So the last thing you need to understand about the Zodiac to pick up on the encoding in movies is that each sign is correlated with a body part And this goes way back to centuries-old medicine. You should realize that medicine back in the day was mostly plants. So it had a lot to do with the sun and what plants were growing at what time of the year. So when you look at these images, you should maybe pay attention to a few that I know are commonly encoded in the movies. First off, Pisces is the feet. And there are a lot of movies where you will see the feet used in allegory to indicate that the encoded storyline is in Pisces. Scorpio is the genitals, both male and female. This is often referred to in allegory in movies. Also, sayings that we get, like the heart of a lion, you can see by this image where that comes from, or being bull-headed. You'll notice the bull up on the shoulders there, which is the back of the head or the lower mind. Aries the ram being the higher mind, but, the phrase bull-headed. Gemini is, I believe, the arms and lungs, and I've pointed out the ones that you see most commonly encoded, or that I have noticed most commonly encoded in the movies. So let's actually take a look at one of the movies. Okay, so to take a look at Indiana Jones, in one of the movies what you see is Indiana himself identified as the sun in Leo the Lion, as he is the lion tamer. He is confronted by a lion. He finds his whip for the first time that he'll use throughout his lifetime, and he's clearly identified as the sun in Leo, which is probably a reference to the Lion of Judah or something. But to understand the beginning of the movie, I should explain the pillars. In Masonic tradition, in tarot cards, whenever you see these two pillars, one of the things that is often encoded is the the spring and fall equinoxes. These pillars represent that in almost all cases, though they may have other meanings and other allegories. One of the most used meanings for these pillars is the left one is the spring equinox and the right one is the fall equinox, which brings us to the opening of the Indiana Jones movie, which begins in the fall equinox, where they've lined up Indy as kind of an obelisk with that mountain, which blends into the Paramount logo, and the sun is falling behind that. The next thing that we see is a poison dart shot into a tree, which is allegory for the sign of Scorpio, the poison dart being analogous to the scorpion's sting. As we move forward, Indy goes down into hell. In all these movies, when Indy goes into cold weather or down into caves, he is in the part of the zodiac which represents hell, which is the winter months. Now, they also further encode the sign of Scorpio by using these arachnids. Scorpions, arachnids, or spiders. As they get into hell, or the mouth of the cave, these spiders are shown very prominently. And so to confirm that we are in fact looking at Scorpio encoded, one of the next things that happens is we see arrows encoding Sagittarius. And there are shooting arrows. There's this scene where these things shoot out of the wall. There's actually, I think, 2 or 3 cases where the arrows are demonstrated. So I'm just going to jump ahead. At the very end of the movie, where they've got the Ark of the Covenant, the guy is standing there with this Jewish religious symbol, which is the ram's head, which has always been analogous to the spring equinox of Aries, and they flash this to let you know that you're in the sign of Aries, and the movie closes in the sign of Gemini. Now, if you look behind Indy and his girlfriend there's twin statues up on the wall. The following movie, I think it's called Temple of Doom, that follows Raiders of the Lost Ark, picks up where this one leaves off in the sign of Gemini. You should also note that the United States of America is ruled, apparently, by the sign of Gemini, or at least they encode things that way. It makes you think in a new way about the Twin Towers. The symbol for Gemini is absolutely the same look as the Twin Towers, and yet the word for Gemini the Twins is in the Twin Towers, and there are many who have made some strong arguments to show that when those towers were knocked down, the United States was being demoted from its place of prominence on the planet. But anyhow, this is a small slice out of the movie. I don't want to go through the whole thing, but it does demonstrate that these movies are in fact encoding angles of the sun, and not just the ones I show you. I don't think I've seen a movie in recent times where this stuff has not been encoded. And again, go back and see my clip on Michael. So there it is. I'll be back with some more footage of the heavens or the sky before long. We're getting out of a rainstorm, and I hope to be shooting within the next couple days again. And if you'd like to follow me on the Examiner, please click the link in the description of this video and subscribe to the author. I will probably produce about 5 articles in February. That's my aim. Anyhow, cheers.